Hey there, you're watching. Reader recap. In the previous chapter, the princess decides to give it another go, and this time tells the woman everything about the abuse Fion was subjected to while she slept. The pale duchess awakens right away when she hears this and asks where her son is. As soon as Leila tells her that Fion is all right, she starts to relax considerably. The duchess then proceeds to explain to Leila why she thought sleeping was preferable than confronting reality. She believed that when the guy she had imprinted on cheated on her, life was no longer worth living. The princess, who has always yearned to be imprinted on, feels bad for Fion's mother since she seems to be tormented over the fact that her soulmate has moved on to be with someone else. She tries to console her, and eventually, the duchess makes a choice. The princess is overjoyed when Fion's mother says they will be going back to Kylon since she knows her bias will be secure. Leila lies and claims to be a fairy when the duchess grills her a number of questions before she may go. The princess instantly teleports again to avoid giving herself away when the duchess, like her son, does not accept the deception. The second princess chooses to visit the library to hunt for a trip guide since she is bored and lacks something to do now that Fion is leaving. She creates books out of thin air and becomes ecstatic. Her pleasure, however, is quickly dashed when her half-siblings enter the library and tease her. Additionally, they claim that her mother poisoned Helene. The voracious reader, shocked by the charge, attempts to recall what she had read about Leila's mother in a former existence. Leila's mother, who was the emperor's favorite, was the 8th wife in the book. She did, however, commit a major crime before passing away by hanging. Although the princess found it difficult to accept that it had really occurred, she could now see why Helene had been distant from her in the past. Her siblings triumphantly leave the room after deciding they have hurt Leila enough. The emperor himself was in the library at the time all this bullying was going on, and after his other daughters departed, he approached Leila. He remarks on how similar she is to his late wife in terms of beauty, and inquires as to whether the second princess would approve of the punishment of her brothers. Leila swiftly rejects, recalling that the emperor's authority was constrained because he was unable to shield the one he cared about most. The emperor, seeing that his daughter is capable of taking care of herself, counsels her to use her power with more caution and to keep to herself in order to stay out of danger. When Leila learns this, she is astounded and decides it is time to go. As she prepares a little suitcase, she finds a whale that has been repaired and stuffed into the back of the closet. The princess suddenly remembers her mother handing her the whale as she studies it. She is perplexed by this recollection, but she is also aware of her current task and chooses to give it some more thought. Leila teleports to the jail in an attempt to locate Fion once she has finished packing her luggage, but she discovers it to be empty. The princess sees her bias approaching just as she is ready to teleport out of the jail to begin her journey. The young heir informs her that he returned because he believed she would be looking for him. Fion begs her to go to Kylon with him when Leila finds his antics amusing and teleports the two of them there. The bias is informed that the princess is also traveling, and she politely rejects. The young heir attempts to learn the second princess's true name, but she still insists on being referred to as a fairy before she may depart. Before she bids him goodbye, Leila assures him that she will stay in touch. Princess Leila's voyage starts when she is released from the palace's restrictions, and the first location she visits is the Noel Shopping Center. She goes shopping often, and one day a shopkeeper offers to sell her a priceless jewel known as the Spirit of the Sea Witch. The shopkeeper does her best to persuade the princess to purchase it by relating the legends surrounding the gem, but the piano player quickly diverts her attention. She chooses to purchase one for herself, but the overly concerned store owner believes that the client really wants to purchase the pianist. Quickly correcting her, Leila makes a decision to purchase the piano and every other pricey item in the shop. The announcement drives the store owner wild, and when she learns that her client is paying with gold, her eyes glitter more brilliantly than the sun. The princess checks over her purchases while relaxing at her estate near Noel. The second princess realizes as she examines the priceless gem that she is unable to duplicate the gem due to the limits of her abilities. Leila hoped she could bring much of the technology from her former life with her into this one. The princess recalls some of the difficulties she ran into when she began using all the money she had magically made in addition to her constraints. Because of her inexperience, several individuals sought to con her as people began to question her source of riches. Leila understands that she has grown tired of shopping, even though she dealt with people who wished to hurt her. Since that was still enjoyable, she chooses to go to the night market later in the day to expand her replication database. The second princess lounges about for the remainder of the day, and when night falls, she gets dressed in a cloak and teleports to the night market. When Leila arrives at the market, she notices a guy selling books and walks up to him. She notices a marmals on a book and discovers that it is a revered animal that gives the Atlantean kingdom perpetual light. The princess also learns that the text she just finished reading was written in the tongue of the Atlantean kingdom. Leila hastily exits the market after pretending to be conversing in gibberish in order to avoid attracting additional attention to herself. Fion hides in the bushes outside Kalon's palace in the meanwhile to evade his martial arts instructors. Until she notices Leila, who has been transported to his place, he is depressed-looking. The princess apologizes to the young heir, who is upset with her for not showing up as she had promised. But she questions why her prejudice was concealed while others were hunting for him. Fion freely confesses that he dislikes the repetitive beatings that go along with his system of teaching his subjects. At the conclusion of the training, he must also triumph over his mother. The young heir also expresses his feelings of being a failure to his mother, who has grown tired of him due to his lack of enthusiasm in combat. When Fion cannot think of a purpose at the time, Leila removes him from Kalon so he may gather his thoughts. She attempts to cheer him up by asking him to find a purpose. The princess ends up getting on a ship and feels queasy the whole time. She acknowledges that she didn't anticipate being seasick and regrets spoiling their holiday. On the other side, Fion is more worried about her well-being and advises that they make a brief stop at a little island. When they land, Leila immediately consents to this and puts her face in the sand. Fion pulls her nearer him so that she might lay on his lap, since he thinks her antics are ludicrous. The second princess is ecstatic with this gift and makes an effort not to humiliate the little heir. She informs him about the spacecraft and how a mystical diamond was in charge of controlling it. Fion chooses to suppress his amazement at the fact that a young lady like her could purchase such an expensive ship. When they hear an odd noise coming from the bushes, they both turn to scan the island. Leila attempts to step in when she observes a little child being pursued by a bunch of intimidating-looking males. Before she can, however, Fion stops her and warns her that the youngster could be a criminal. The frightening-looking guys beat the youngster, and one of them mocks him for pretending to play the piano while he is really a slave. The princess recognizes the lad at the mention of the piano as the one who played the instrument she had purchased. She doesn't waste any time in going to address the intimidating guys, but one of them starts making preparations to sell her instead of taking her seriously. When Fion attempts to shield her from their mocking looks, one of them knocks him out. The second princess's rage explodes the instant he does this. She spins them about in the air, using her power before letting them fall to the ground like dead flies. The princess focused on Fion after being certain they wouldn't cause her any trouble once again. He reassures her that he is okay, and Leila tells the young heir not to worry about her when he attempts to ask how she is doing. She urges him to avoid getting into confrontations in the future since he could be wounded. Fion regrets not being able to shield her in spite of her innocent words. The princess, on the other hand, continues to utilize her healing abilities on her fiancé in order to relieve him of any suffering, as well as on the pianist. The battered lad thanks her and is even more shocked when Leila seeks his advice on what to do with the ominous guys who have injured him. She becomes angrier when he admits that since he was sold as a slave, nobody has ever asked for his opinion. The pianist declares that in retaliation for kidnapping and treating children as slaves, he wants them to experience a long, painful death. Leila doesn't waste any time in fulfilling his demand and punishing the offenders accordingly. The pianist praises her for saving him, but as soon as she is back on board, she feels seasick again. When Philip introduces himself, Fion immediately remarks that he doesn't sound like a commoner or a noble. Philip timidly acknowledges that he is nothing more than a bottom-feeding slave who has already suffered great loss. Leila answers that she is a fairy when he chooses to shift the subject by asking her for her name. The pianist acknowledges her without question and extends her gratitude once again. A marmal, the ocean's aurora, quickly ends their chat, shining a brilliant light inside the ship, leaving everyone spellbound by its beauty. The princess remarks on how fortunate they were to have seen one, given that some sailors spend their whole lives at sea and never see a marmal. When Philip hears this, he scoffs and tells them that he has never thought of himself as fortunate. A dejected Philip starts his life's terrible story once Leila learns why this is the case. Before the region of Haven was assaulted by pirates 5 years ago, he claims to have lived in peace there. As everyone led quiet lives, they were unprepared for the invasion and struggled to defend themselves. The attempt by his father to recruit mercenaries using the castle as collateral had failed. They had also asked the House of Girion for assistance, but all they received in return were prayers. Philip's father died as the number of victims became steadily worse. After his father passed away, Count Girion and his army showed up there, and the pirates fled. Philip had been a little cheery while grieving over his father since he believed the conflict was resolved. The Count, however, claimed that it was merely the beginning, blaming his father for sending the pirates into Haven and calling them traitors. Hearing this infuriates Leila, who pauses his story to inquire as to whether Haven had any laws permitting all of this to have occurred. The pianist acknowledges that there was a trial, but that it was lost because there weren't enough witnesses left to uphold his father's honor. The rest of their family members were also sold into slavery after the trial. Leila replies in the opposite way Philip had anticipated, telling him that today is his fortunate day since he just met a fairy who was willing to give him 3 wishes. Philip asks Leila whether she understood why he had branded himself unlucky. Leila tells the pianist that since he met her, he has also become fortunate, and the pianist questions why she was even assisting him at all. He starts with his first desire, which is to have a bank that can circulate 1 million gold coins, after finally realizing that his future was about to change. Despite the unusualness of his request and the quantity of paperwork it would need, the princess accepts. The enchanted stone mine that the Count seized from his home is his second desire. When Fion overhears this, he questions why Philip would choose a location full of frightening supernatural creatures. The pianist provides a good argument for his belief that the magic stone will still be available since no one has visited the location yet because of the magical creatures. Leila appreciates his explanation and requests his third desire from him. Fion inquires as to if Rosalind is Philip's girlfriend when he says he would want to rescue his mate. That's all for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you and see you on the next one.